And we're back. Welcome to Print Your Games, the podcast all about 3D printing for the resin fiends and filament addicts. I'm one of your hosts, Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param, and I'm joined by
Kirsten Sowards, also known as Lost Fears.
And today we are joining you for our first episode of the new year. Happy 2022, Christian.
Happy New Year, Param.
Yes. Have you already got many resolutions done?
Kind of avoiding them. My resolution is to be organic and let things happen this year, probably. So
that's a good resolution to flow like water.
That's the idea.
I have one resolution.
Let's hear it.
I want to paint more minis than I did last year.
Oh, I'm terrible at keeping track. You know, you threw out some numbers the other day, and I was like, I don't know. Did I print that many? I don't know. So I think you definitely painted more than you finished painting more things than I did.
I had to go count. Like I had to literally go through my Facebook feed and find like the earliest pictures I posted and okay, so that's the ones I posted in January, and then from there on I counted all the minis that I have that I've painted this year. And I did want to do it's a little bit of a humble brag on that one is I painted 211 miniatures specifically.
Dang, that's
this year in 2021, which is slightly less than I painted in 2020.
I went
nuts. Yeah, but in 2020, I was trying to I just got the printer in March, and I was just pounding out miniatures and just trying to get everything painted. Everything was a speed paint. Lots and lots of plastic and resin flying across my paint table, and speed was king. And before the last couple of years, all I really cared about was being a speed painter. Just get everything tabletop ready. As long as it looks better than a WizKids paint job, I know I'm good, and I can get the eyeball on the side of the head and still be better than a WizKids paint job.
Nice. Yeah, I think I'm in that year right now, I think.
Your stuff already looks kind of nice. I like some of the gradients you're pulling off. I mean, you're Dana howling the crap out of these, and I love it.
I will definitely say that is an inspiration for sure. I love Dana's stuff. So
we already have a couple people in chat. Hello, Alex and Stephen. If you have any questions for us, just ask them in the live chats in the various places that this video is appearing, or you're hearing this in the podcast. If there's somehow a magical audio only chat that we don't know about, go ahead and ask, and we will answer those questions throughout the podcasts. But yeah, so I did it. I counted them all up, and 211 miniatures painted. And this is the year I really focused on getting better at painting, not just getting stuff painted. I wanted to learn how to make my stuff look as good as I possibly could make it. And
Steven, super excited for that. Sorry.
Yeah, Steven in chat says Army Painter Speed Paint should be coming. Should be up. Let me read. I can't read. Army Painter Speed Paint Army Paint Speed Paint, which is the worst name. Army Painter Speed Paint should speed up your painting once it's released.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Again, Dana got to preview the big set recently, and I was just like, oh, I want.
I know. I really like it because I do have the full contrast collection because I love contrast style painting. And I make my own contrast style paints using the Goobertown recipes, and then I've since tweaked that to my personal preference. And one of the things I do agree with is that paint is, while good, the Citadel contrast paints are very good, and I use them frequently. I do have my favorites. They do vary strongly in viscosity.
Use
one of my college words,
and they can be very tacky for a long time. If you don't seal them, they can stick to you.
Oh yeah, you've got to seal this stuff. So some of them, and what we mean is by viscosity is some of the paint is much thicker in the pot than the others, and so when you're actually painting with it, it feels very different and not very predictable. And some of them are much more translucent than others, and I would say some of them Gilliman Flesh is just barely more than a wash, like an Agrax Earthshade wash or something like that, or Army Painter Strong Tone. While some of them like Leviathan blue, which is a really, really dark Prussian blue, that's a very thick thing, and it doesn't do quite the contrast work that the others do. Like some of these, it's like you can look at those and it's pitch black, and you look at the highlights and it blinds you like looking at fresh snow in December. But some of them are just like, we got black and almost black in the highlights.
Right. I also notice they separate at different rates too. Like, because I am not up to my 200, although, I probably got close to maybe 100. I don't know, maybe a little bit less, but,
anything more than zero is a win.
Some of them separate out very, very quickly. Like, the white one.
Oh yeah. Apothecary white.
Yes.
Oh. Yeah,
which I'm still having trouble. Like until today, I had trouble mixing it back together very well, and I've never really got great results with it.
So the key is to put mixing bowls in them.
I have a new possible strategy that I'll talk about later today.
Ooh, I like strategies.
Yes.
But why I bring the viscosity up is the new Army Painter speed paint line appears to be much intentionally consistent in viscosity and performance across the line. And from what I've seen of those tests from Dana and others, and that I've seen paint using them, it looks to be much closer to the Goob recipe version of consistency when I'm seeing what I see about how they pull, how they handle. I have not yet got to touch this paint. Of the free merch gear that companies have sent me, Army Painter's not one of them. So
nope.
If you happen to be listening, Army Painter, we'd love to preview them on some 3D painted minis.
Yes, please. Send them to both of us, please.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I'll probably lose my patience and buy them the second they're out. So.
I know. And in the price tags that we're seeing of the base set, and then extrapolating out to the price per bottle from that, it's going to save me a lot of money because that contrast paint, I love that contrast paint. It's $8 a bottle. To get that full set, it made me cry. It made me cry real bad, Kristen.
You know why it makes me cry, Perrin?
What makes you cry?
Because I knock it over.
Oh no. Have you printed it yet? We've demanded that you print the don't spill it thing.
No, I was gonna get it on my FDM printer when I got it.
Oh yeah.
But anyway.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just say that didn't go well, did it?
It did not go well. And I am finally humbled enough to think that it was entirely my fault. So I pounded for a day and a half. I pounded my head against it and just thought, and it was also a little disheartening because the community support was great, but everybody was like, you're going to be replacing that part anyway. You're going to be replacing this part anyway. And I'm like, wait, the printer I'm buying isn't good. And they're like, no, it's great. It's great. But you're eventually going to upgrade it. And I was just like, that kind of maker mindset, resin is so good to go.
Right.
That going
you don't
over
want
to
to be replacing parts randomly in the resin.
Right. And so it's really kind of weird getting my head around, no, you can get a better extruder. You can do this, you can do that. But everybody's just telling me you're going to replace it anyway. You should just keep it. I'm like, no. When I realized it was actually broken, then I sent it back. I am going to challenge myself though. I am going to get the same one back and try to learn the thing as opposed to running away from it like I did my last Anycubic after I messed it up, which was entirely my fault. As we've discussed, buy screen protectors. Okay, I said it once this episode.
This is true. A lot of the FDM market is still left over from, or a lot of the FDM fan base is still left over from the hobbyist days, which is largely a hobby but you build these things. It's like customizing your favorite hot rod, but instead it prints benchies, and that's wonderful and fun. And getting to tune stuff is a lot of fun. But I do like the print and play aspect, which is kind of why I went for the Neptune 2, because very much it markets itself as, you don't do that.
Right.
You just put this printer together and it works great.
Right.
And you don't have to replace parts on it if you don't want to.
Well, and the marketing on the model I'm getting says that, but the community says otherwise. So we'll see.
Oh,
I don't know.
Oh boy. Well, here's hoping that by the next time we chat, you've got lots and lots of paint not spill thingies scattered across your desk.
Or
have you considered
terrain?
Have you considered just just blue tack underneath the bottle.
So I got
and
one of those
then
little triangle
squish.
things, the little rubbery triangle things, and they're great, but they only hold 3 paints. So and
how
a
many
couple of my
how many are you using at once?
What's that?
How many do you have open at once?
I'm Modi.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I usually have like a whole, you know, I don't know, 16.
I sit there and protect my contrast paints. I treat it.
See,
like
and I need to
gold.
do that
And
because inevitably what happens is like I'm like, oh, reaching over, and that I finally get the lid to like prop up right, and I hit the lid, and the thing flips over. Yeah, and there it goes, right in there. In fact, I can see it. It's too far away to reach without like going off screen for a bit. But there's a plate that has the wreckage of like. And for viscosity purposes, it actually has some bases that were submerged in the spill and are like now like fossilized into this pool of blood. Because I think it was like a flesh terrors red or something.
Oh, wow.
Anyway,
like I just with the contrast paints, half the reason I do it is like I don't want it to evaporate fast, so I close the lids almost as soon as I can.
Yeah,
because I just imagining it sucking pennies straight out of my bank account every time it's open.
Yeah, you know, things were tight earlier this year, and I knocked over this desert sand one, and I was just so like livid, and like talking about the money and everything, and my friend was like, "I'm just gonna buy you a new one because you're clearly upset." I'm like, "No, that's not the point." But I was like, "That's like $7 on the table." Anyway,
well, the good news is that the Army Painter Speed paints, they look to be right around $4 a bottle, and they are dropper bottles. So you're not going to accidentally, you knock it over, and oh no, I accidentally spilt 0.0001 milliliters onto my table.
Yeah, you know, like people are, if they keep listening to this over time, are gonna think I'm an Army Painter shell because I buy a lot of their stuff for just like big work projects and stuff. And
I just bought the entire the shade line. I bought the whole line.
And actually, since I do a lot of color priming, I use theirs a lot, them and Vallejo pretty much. I tried my theme clearly so far this year has been experimenting. I tried something new, a Tamaya base coat, which from a mini rattle cans, that was different. It's a very different consistency.
I am very familiar with that because I'm also into building Gundams, and that is the preferred primer for Gundams because it is super thin.
Yes.
It is super gentle, and it is probably the best primer you can get for the hobby. But oh boy, it's expensive. You're spending like $15 on like a third of a can that we would imagine.
I'm just gonna tell you that my local hobby shop that I have discovered since they have re-embraced some things lately, it's a lot cheaper than that. So
nice.
I may be playing with it. I was just surprised how thin it was. I had no idea. I did. One of the things I didn't send you a picture of was some egg sacs with victims all like tied up in them, and it's like so thin, and so I actually had to wipe. Yeah, I think my games tend to be a little creepier. Anyway, we'll talk about that. Oh, I didn't even put that in there. Oh, anyway, sorry.
We do have to congratulate Alex in chat, who has informed us that I must have painted over 100 last year. My Imperial Guard army is 104 minis and 29 Ultramarines. This includes 7 3D printed tanks and 4 walkers / dreadnoughts. That is a lot of printing and painting there, Alex. Congratulations. What theme for the Guard? Did you go classic Cadian, or are you shovel enthusiast?
And how many points is that? Jeebus.
I have no idea. It's 100 Guard minis, including 4 tanks. I'm assuming 400.
Well, anyway, give him a second to bounce back at us.
Yeah.
But
so yeah, go.
No. I've been playing with lots of things, lots of experimenting. We'll be talking about it more as things go on.
Right.
So
you did mention something that's going to make your painting life easy for all these printed minis.
Did I? Oh, yes, the portable thing?
Yes.
Ah, yes. So unfortunately, and they might take online ordering. This is a portable airbrush from MRS Hobbies here in town.
Show me.
Well, it's all boxed up right now. Sorry, I was not prepared for class. Well, maybe we should come back to it. I don't want this kind of dead air here.
Fantastic. Well, while you worry about unboxing that thing, preferably with a muted microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I will move on and give us the good news. We mentioned last episode or episode before last that Elegoo has announced their new printer, their new version of the Saturn S. And oh boy, was it very S. It was very nice incremental upgrade to the Saturn with filters and cameras and a slightly bigger build plate, but not much more resolution. And it was very much the premium version of last year's model, which is exactly the kind of upgrade we're expected to see from Elegoo on these printers. But I said I'd be much more excited when an Elegoo Saturn 2 was announced. And then they did! They announced the Elegoo Saturn 2. This was first picked up on Reddit by Schrodinger Spider, which is a killer username, by the way. And then, of course, we got some details based off of a translated Chinese page, which about the Saturn. So what we know is that it has 218 by 123 by 250 millimeters, which is which is a slightly bigger build volume than the Saturn 1, but more importantly, it's a taller build volume by quite a bit, whereas the Saturn itself is like 218. So the 250 will allow for some much longer boys to be printed if you want to get some tall models out of that thing.
Do your big Lord of the Print dragon wings and stuff on it.
Ooh, yeah. Or I'm really wanting to print that Duncan Shadows Cyclops giant, and I want to print it as big as I can in one single piece.
Yikes.
Yeah. Also, it is an 8K printer. That's the big exciting part. So this is basically answering the Mono X 6K challenge that was thrown down that we've seen. So this is Elegoo's answers to the 6K mono. So it's an 8K Saturn. So take that. That's 2 more Ks, Anycubic. That might be more Ks than we need. It also appears to have the same camera and filter plugs that the Saturn S is going to come with. So I imagine they share some tech, and that kind of makes sense as why the Saturn S is coming out, is like because we made it anyway, so we might as well have a version at that price point. It's coming in the translation of the Chinese price is about $630 which puts it right around the low end of the price that the 6K Mono X's are coming in at.
Right.
And so, but again, this is just a translation of the announced Chinese price, and even that subjects to change. So who knows? But hey, good news. New Saturn, lovely stuff. I don't know that I'll rush out and upgrade, but I will say that I would appreciate the higher resolution screen on something big like a Saturn more so than I would like an 8K like Mars model.
Right.
Like that smaller print bed. The Mars 3 has a 6K screen, no 4K screen on it, and it's glorious. And then you have the like the Frozone Mini that has the 6K screen, and it's already like at that point you're passing up, like I think injection molding is capable of 25 micron detail preservation, and 3D printing on that Frozone Mini 6K for the Elegoo Mars size build plate, that small size printer that most people have, is at like 22 microns. So at that point you're getting more detail than traditional mold making can even capture.
Nice.
And I do not have eyes.
Yeah.
My elven eyes do not see those tiny details at that point.
I'm also going to throw out a little modesty that I could not paint to that quality probably ever. And I mean, it will help my painting look better, but that I will probably lose that in a thick, hastily applied, unthinned, frustrated layer of paint.
And so are you excited about the concept of a Saturn 2 coming out in the world?
Well, sure. And, you know, given my track record, I break things every couple of years, so I'll probably need one eventually. I finally broke something on my current one, so nothing big, but we'll talk about that in a second, I think. Yeah, I think eventually I'm going to want one. My real question is, by the time I need the upgrade, will there not just be a better one?
Yeah, that's the situation with the printers. Is I think it is an important leg up, and I could totally see upgrading my Saturn to this to get that little bit more print quality out of my Saturn.
Right.
And it is a big enough upgrade that I could justify that, especially at a $600 some price tag. Like I could save that up and grab that. I wouldn't be so sad. And if I was jumping in and I was buying a printer for this first time, I would probably absolutely recommend spending that extra $200 to get the higher resolution Saturn again, because at these medium format resin printers, that extra resolution does matter. When you're talking about the smaller screens, you're talking about the difference between, I think Adam Savage's tested was saying like the Mars 3, which is a 4K printer, and the Saturn is a 4K printer, but the Mars 3 has a 35 micron resolution at that print range, whereas the 6K screen on the Frozen Mini 6K has a 22 micron.
Right.
So, better, but we're starting to see tinies. But the difference is when you have a build plate that's literally 3 times the size on a Saturn, which is like literally 3 Mars build plates stacked side to side to side. That is where that extra resolution will very much help improve the quality of the minis and would probably be noticeable even to my sad eyes. So I think the next time I buy a printer, getting a higher resolution is going to be high on my list on things to get at this medium format size, not so much the tiny format size.
Right. I think for me, by the time I need the upgrade, depending on where I'm at fiscally, I bet you the price of this will come down quite a bit as a new better one comes out. So then it's going to be a very hard choice to make. Do I save a little money and get this really awesome printer that's coming out right now, or whatever the new hotness is right then?
Or do you go big, $1,400 and grab a Jupiter?
Yeah. Someone was like saying, "Well, shouldn't you get a Formlabs?" I'm like, no. They just announced a 40% increase today, actually, to their speeds, and I'm like, yeah, they also are $3,000 or $4,000. No, when that happens, we'll be doing something else probably.
Oh, I mean, I would love to have. I mean, I would definitely appreciate those printers, but like with those big super mega printers, I mean, like you've watched the Uncle Jesse channels where he's printing on some of those, and it is like chug 3, 4 entire bottles of resin. It's like, you better hope this print don't fail, because that's $120 worth of resin you just poured in that tank.
Well, one of the things I was really hesitant about the FDM that I was looking at, because it's got this really massive build plate. But I'm like, because I was like, well, I could get those Kraken tiles you like and like set up a whole bunch of them and print like this whole board. I'm like, well, what if there's a fail though? Like, how much? I know FDM is cheap, but both time, the build times were like 14 hours on the stuff I was looking at. And I was like, it's like, so I'm going to lose a day. I'm going to blow a ton of FDM. And so I'm like, oh, so I don't know how much bigger I want to go until it's like flawless. Right. So
I think you definitely need to do test prints on benchies before you ever start to print castles.
Did we say benchies?
Yeah, the benchy. You don't know what a benchy is?
Benchy?
Oh, wow.
Like there's owls. The test owls?
So the benchy is a classic test print that is like the calibration test print for FDM printers. It's this tiny little boat that's designed to be printed completely supportless.
Kind of like that Amerilabs thing, but it's a bolt.
It's a tiny little boat. I need to pull up a benchy. You need to see a benchy. It's this little cute tugboat.
Boat. I think you said bolt. Because I remember when we first got demo printers when I used to be at big corporate bookstore, we did demos and made screws to prove that you could print screwable things.
So
that's cute.
It is a cute little boat, but more than being cute, it is designed in such a way that the different parts of the boat will tell you different things about how you need to calibrate your printer. Like the hull itself will show how your printer is handling overhangs, and the little flat window tells you how well it's going to do benchies, and so on. And like the little holes that are circles tell you whether or not your scaling is off on the X, Y, and Z axis, because if it doesn't look like a circle punched out, it means you've got to configure it so that you're printing in the right scale. and nothing's like, but if it looks like an oval, something's wrong. You've got to make some adjustments. And the Benchy is absolutely lovely. It's a neat little it's been part of the community and the culture of 3D printing for a while now. And you should print using Benchies.
Well, here I am back as ground zero with FDM stuff. So you'll get all sorts of terrible noob stories from me. It'll be great.
Wonderful. And so it's like the Amerilabs test town, but for FDM printers. So yeah, go do a Benchy. Benchies are fun. And plus, when you're done with the Amerilabs test town, you get this like ugly little city that you don't even bother curing and you throw it away. With Benchy, you got a cool little tugboat.
Yeah.
It is worth noting that the Benchy is not designed to actually float. And even if you were to print it correctly in something that would float, like most of the plastics are hollow, Benchy kind of just tips over in the water.
Yeah, it kind of looks like it would. Yeah. I'm also now more impressed by Alex because he says that his guard was from 1995 and that it's been sitting in his shame pile for over 25 years and that he knocked it out. So, hat off to you for finally doing it. I've got a substantial stack of gray that it's only getting more dusty now that I've been printing new things. So like I hats off that you got back to it. That's really cool. Yeah. Did you see Bastille asked if you printed dice?
I have not yet printed dice, but I'm going to. I'm actually doing the initial research, and I don't want to just print somebody's dice. I want to make my own dice and print my own dice from scratch and designed. And then I want to make them into masters, into molds, and start actually pouring some resin dice sets.
The pouring stuff, like, I saw Dispel when they were first getting going and launched that, and that was incredible. And there's a couple other Dice Witchery. There's a whole bunch of them. And
Rabinator is a great channel for 3D printing and casting dice.
Cool. Yeah. So like that's really interesting to me too. But at the same point, I already have so many dice.
I know, but you can always have more.
I know.
Mm-hmm. Always more.
But then there's the whole thing like that my players are super sus and they like want them perfectly balanced. Like we have to put them in water.
This ain't Vegas.
Nice. The thing is here.
Oh, yes. Show me your thing.
It's little and adorable. Jeez. Yeah, it's got the dual action you'd expect. It's not that loud. I'm going to do it just once so people hear it. That's the compressor running.
Okay, it's very important right now for our audio listeners that I tell you that he is holding up a portable airbrush.
Oh, we did just say thing. Yeah, it is a portable airbrush. It has two pots, but like the assembly is just the compressor, which is USB powered and charged. And the brush, just two pieces there, and a pot and a cap, and then there's one extra pot that's much bigger if you want to put a lot of paint in it.
Right, that's already way more paint than I would recommend putting in an airbrush at once, unless you're going to do some t-shirts.
Right. And to me though, like one of the biggest things, like I have say it's a good starter airbrush, right, in the garage, but it's in the garage and it has a big compressor and it's loud as hell. And it's summer, it was great, and in winter it's been miserable, even in fall it was kind of miserable. And this is something that'll help me kind of build skill and just chill out. It was very affordable, and I'm really sorry for people that I don't know where to get it online.
Okay, so I know where to get them online because I suspected what you had, and I have bought them before. In fact, I have one and do indeed enjoy mine. So you can get, they come in a few varieties, but here's one specifically that I've bought before, which is just a rebrand of the same concept.
Very, very similar price point too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's around somewhere between $50 and $70. You can get them with different feature sets and stuff. So just little portable airbrushes with a really cheap airbrush attached to it. And what's your opinion on how they went? I very much enjoyed using them.
Yeah, I actually got to play with it in the shop a bit. The kits are assembled by a big Warhammer guy that works there, and it's really fluid. It's I hate to say it, pretty much as good as my, $125 big one. Now, my $125 one came with paint. It came with 3 different airbrushes, with a bunch of pot things, extender. But like, if this, for some reason, I actually kind of like this as a handle. If you wanted to get it off there, so you just had the pen feel, you could just go get a cord from Harbor Freight for like $5 or less. So
yeah,
no big.
Yeah. So I have one, and I do also have a much nicer Awada airbrush.
Yeah.
And that little airbrush was surprisingly good for a cheap little airbrush. And if you are getting started with miniature painter and you don't want to have like the full compressor and hose set up and all that, that is a great little option. It handles primer real good and easy. So if you're just going to get something to prime your minis, or just to put down simple base coats and simple layers, it's great. Like, yeah, it's not going to be as good as like a dedicated, just the brush itself costs $70 or more nice brush, but for most of what we do in the hobby of painting little tiny dudes, it's the right option. It's a good option.
Yeah, for gradients, stuff like that, priming, like you said, I used it with inks, the one I had in the shop, and worked really well. Distribution was good. I struggle, like, I would say I'm still running in the limits of my skill and understanding way more than the tool. Like, and one of the things that's nice about something like this, where you can play with it a lot and it's very convenient, like, it's going to help me build that confidence, right? Taking this to like friends, we have paint parties sometimes, not as much right now for reasons, but we do have them, and I've always been like, well, if I get used to using my airbrush and I go over to Matt's or Craig's house, like, but now it's nothing. I'll probably take it on purpose,
Nice. Yeah. And it does a great job. It's easy to charge up, and yeah, I do recommend it. It's a great starter option too, to see if this is anything you even want to get involved in. But of course, it's still an airbrush, so the usual warnings and safety procedures still apply here. Like, if you're using acrylic paints, there's less stuff to worry about than if you're using lacquers or alcohol-based paints. But you still want to wear a mask if you do not have a ventilation setup or a ventilation booth. And do keep in mind, it's still spraying paint, so you want to spray into something that isn't your friend's coffee table while you're painting that.
Yeah, I mean, but you can make a little cheap hood out of a cardboard box pretty easy.
Yeah. So like, you don't have to have like the like I have here, like the dedicated paint booth that's ventilated outside with a working filtration system, and you can just have the big cardboard box, or
you can have the ghetto pizza box.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Now, is that what you used on the mini pictures you were showing me?
No, those are mostly rattle can priming jobs again.
Yeah, you were showing me some really weird looking 6-armed cultist girls.
Yeah, they're when we talk about our projects later, or if we're doing that now, but they're part of a spider thing that I'm putting together.
Oh, creepy stuff. More creepy stuff from you, Kristen. I knew it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I really wish I'd send a picture of that egg sack thing, because it's super creepy.
In chat, we've got my friend Kevin, actually, wondering if I ever got around to playing Grimdark Firefight. Grimdark Future Firefight from One Page Rules. Yeah, I have played it. It's a lot of fun. It's a great way to just bash some models together and play some dice. A good alternative to a game like, say, Kill Team, if you wanted to play something like that, or Necromunda. It's a wonderful free game. I like it a lot. Go check it out over at One Page Rules. I have played it and enjoy. Do we have any other questions from chat real quick? Nope.
No.
Good.
Just benchy commentary.
Yeah. Everybody loves the benchy. All right. Cool. So what is next? We've got... You had a problem and you got to solve it.
Yes. I get anxious, especially right after having the big fail experience with the FDM printer. I was like, I got to get back on the horse. I'm going to go print something. And First off, again, to full disclosure, bad thing I did. Bad thing.
What'd you do?
My resin had been sitting for almost a week and a half, 2 weeks during the holidays, and I was lazy and I didn't want to pour it out and reshake it and redo it. So I tried to mix it with my build plate. And I think that's normally okay if you're using resin that's been there a few days.
Yeah, I've churned the build plate.
Been a while though. And so what I did not realize is that enough of the resin had settled on the bottom of the tank and it made a really sticky, yucky layer, right?
Ooh.
So I set up my spiders and I'm popping it down and it adhered. I'd never had the build plate stick. Like the engine the motor grinded when it was trying to pull off. And so first off, I knew like the print was probably garbage, right? But
Some of your concerns at this point.
Yeah, but
these are not supposed to grind.
Right. So I canceled the print and just kind of futzed around, tried to mix up some stuff again. I thought, it's probably got a couple layers. It's going to be fine. Well, yeah, it kind of was fine. I had some fails in the print. It was about 12 different minis on the plate, and I think about 6 or 7 of them failed. And some unusual fails. But what I noticed when it finally all came up was that I had definitely destroyed my FEP. Like it had bubbled from those initial pulls.
Oh, ouch.
And I think that caused some of the fails. I do think some of the other fails might have been for something else. So my FEP was shot and I had been riding that, what now, 6 or 7 months, maybe?
Oh 6. My gosh, that thing is way beyond its lifespan.
Yeah. And everybody was telling me like, you can't possibly still be on your first one. I'm like, yeah, it works great. Everything's fine. And then that happened. I was just like, nope, it's done. So yeah, I finally bit the bullet and did the change out the FEP. It was not as bad as expected. There are a ton of screws though. I had no idea.
And for our listeners who do not know what an FEP is, it is the thin plastic layer at the bottom of a build vat that allows the light to pass through to the resin, and it is a non-stick material, which is why it's so important, so that the resin will easily peel off of it. It's not supposed to grind and yank it to pieces while you get the things off of it, and these things will eventually wear out.
Yeah. And I think I might have lucked out because Elegoo eventually did do because I did get branded Elegoo FEP replacements.
Nice.
I think I'm going to pack out like 5 of them, but they eventually did a high tensile strength one.
Ooh.
And I think they tested them, and there may have been a generation that was somewhere in the middle, because I will tell you the new FEP that I have on there is like bulletproof. Like I may, just because it's new, but I don't think so. Like I've never seen the resistance to everything. Like it was a really crisp, flawless retraction every time. And of course I was paranoid because FDM broke, screwed up my FEP on that. So like I was just like, it's gonna break. And so I think I've never babysitted a print job like that, but it was so happy and doing its thing.
Yeah. Those first few prints on the new FEP are flawless. They're crisp.
Well, I did have perfect. One failed again though in the same way as the first one, and I'm beginning to wonder. I love Artisan Guild. I will say this: I do love
Artisan Guild. Yes,
they're minis for a game that. Okay, they're for whatever you're using them for, but a lot of people use them for very specific games, and those have very specific mini sizes, and they're big. They're too big. And I think, and I don't know, but because the flaw that caused it with the bad resin and all the other stuff was exactly the same as the flaw I saw when I fixed everything with brand new resin and brand new everything and a brand new FEP, because only about 3 of the figs the minis were Artisan Guild, but I had downsized them about 80%.
Okay, yeah, that's a bit more than you're supposed to go.
Right, and even still, they're so big they don't fit on large bases, even though they're supposed to be large, giant, spidery things. And so I was like, those are huge. Really, is what I probably should have just done is made them bigger. But yeah,
regularly so. Artisan Guild purports that they sell 32 millimeter size models. They are kind of on the tall side of even that measurement. And the correct scaling is around 85% to get to a 28 millimeter scale model, which is, say, if you were to go buy a deep cut figure, WizKids deep cut, they are actual true 28 millimeter size. Those models are, or if you have some old Warhammer lying around or you buy something from North Stars, like the Stargrave kits or the Frostgrave kits or the Oathmark kits, those are all true 28 millimeter models.
Right.
And to get that exact size, you need to scale Artisan Guild down to 85%.
Right. And I think I maybe took it a little too far.
Yeah,
but even
going all the
still,
way
they're
to 80.
so big they don't fit on large bases even still. So I'm like,
yeah. So you don't do your own supports when you rescale that much?
Oh, I did.
Oh.
I think that maybe the rescale maybe tweak something. I don't know, because they're the exact same layer failed on all the spider limbs that they failed on. It's the exact same point in the model. It's failed on the same 3 limbs. It was like the exact same failure. And so like the only other possibility, which heaven forbid, is that something's wrong with my LCD screen at that point. So I am going to try some different stuff in that same area and see if it still has fails. Because if that happens, then something else is wrong, right?
Right.
But I think it's just the drastic drop in size. Is my guess. Because I don't know if you remember my dwarves that did that too. And they ended up more like gnome size because I guessed how small they needed to be, and they were like,
so
they're
adorable. I print my AG stuff that I rack beside the rest of my 28 millimeter models. I print them at 90, and they're still a little big, but they're not so much big that it's a distraction at that point. Now, of course, giant spiders, you're trying to get them on a very specific base size,
right?
That's a different story. That's a completely different story.
Well, and what I'll probably end up doing, and I would recommend this for anybody who's doing this and having a little bit of problem with the same size squeezing things, I'll probably put them on decorative bases eventually. And the decorative bases usually have overhangs and rocks and things that can kind of support that and still kind of have the little footprint underneath all the Liberty gibbet, like they'll have their trees and things that the spider can be propped up on, but it'll still have a 50 millimeter base.
Right. Kevin in chat is talking about Warhammer Scale being 25, not 28. And so I think this is important that I bring up what I'm talking about when I talk about miniature scale. And I'm not talking about base size. Because the base size that you use is mainly dependent on the game you're playing.
Correct.
And that changes. But miniature size, so Warhammer models used to be, and they still purport to kind of be, at 28 millimeter scale. And that isn't the size of the base they're standing on. That is the distance from their foot to the eyeball of an average person, is how that old scale is measured. So a 32 millimeter scale model, that coincidentally Warhammer likes to put those on 32 millimeter round bases. The measurement would, if I was standing straight up, you measured from my heel to my eyeball, it would be 32 millimeters equals 6 feet.
All right, I could see that.
Yeah, so that's when I start talking about 28 millimeter scale, 32 millimeter scale, and which I have done on this podcast a lot. That's what I'm talking about. Whereas base size will change from game to game. Whereas your average D&D player is going to do a medium size mini is on a round base that is 25 millimeters one side across, and a large mini like your spider is somewhere between 40 and 50 millimeters across. Basically, it fits in a 2-inch by 2-inch grid.
Right.
And the official models from D&D alternate between whether or not they're on 40s or 45s or 50s. It changes.
And a lot of the people who do Patreons for minis will do 28 millimeter bases instead of 25, but you will generally not notice that if it's a round base. I mean, if you're really finicky, but it doesn't cause a lot of problems unless you're playing on tight 3D dungeon terrain that has walls.
Whereas I play a lot of war games, and therefore the base size is super important. Like it is, like, strategically important.
Well, you use trays though, right? For huge troop movement.
That's for Kings of War.
Okay.
But when I'm playing Age of Fantasy, or I'm playing, Age of Sigmar or Warhammer or some of the size of the base matters, because it affects things like how far auras reach, what it can fit in. So
because you can go from the far end of the base or something.
No, it mostly depends on like where they can fit, how you measure range, around something, how many different models can squeeze into combat. So, like if you're on
Right.
like 20 millimeter squares, which is what old Warhammer normal, what we would call medium-sized characters were on 20 millimeter squares, and now they're on 25 millimeter rounds. Well, more of those 20 millimeter squares can squeeze into a tighter space. Therefore, more monsters can attack your forces than if I was basing them correctly.
Goodness, I haven't played Warhammer in so long.
Yeah. It's less of a big deal than some people make it out to be, but like there's a reason that base sizes are standardized in certain games like that. Whereas in D&D, it just needs to fit in the square.
Right. Which is why the big oval bases that are so popular on the war game stuff are infuriating to me.
Yeah. Don't. That's not for that. That's
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always replacing those bases. Anyway, sorry.
But you successfully changed your FEP.
I did.
One of the most daunting things you can do as a resin printer, because it's the one thing that is like, the FEP is fragile. You don't want to scratch it. You don't want to poke it. And if you get a hole in your FEP, you can ruin your printer, is like what people say. If you don't have a screen protector, make sure you have a screen protector.
Yes. Thank you for saying it. Yeah. So yeah, that was, especially after that experience, it was really kind of a little like, especially because you get it. And you said something about spacers. I don't know if you were talking about the fact that you have to like get it back down over the thing, and it's.
Yeah, in the outline, I mentioned spacer for changing your FEP. So when you change your FEP, you're supposed to take the vat and you unscrew the bottom of it. And the bottom has basically sandwiched in this FEP at just the right tension. And when you're putting it back together, you're supposed to put, when you first put it on the first frame, when you metal, like metal donut, plastic, the second metal donut that holds the plastic in place, you're supposed to put an object under the FEP to make sure that it has enough slack.
An object they say is a sponge in their tutorial that does not come with your printer, that is not in your replacement branded thing from them.
Nope. That you're just supposed to be able to find this exact same sponge.
Yep.
So people use other things.
I used paper towels.
Paper towels is a good choice, folding it up. I use a bottle cap, just like a standard Pepsi bottle cap. I just put it dead center, and that's what I use. It's probably not the best. Sometimes I've not used anything, and honestly don't notice much of a difference, but I'm sure that it's some of our listeners are going to tell me the terrible things I'm doing to my printer and my FEP layer.
I did have to say, there was a little moment when I was screwing them on. I was going back and forth. We talked about it for the listeners to tighten it in like a star pattern going like around your border. There are like 24 screws in the first layer, and then like there's, I want to say
it's
12 so many screws. It's a bunch. But when I was doing all that, I was like, it's gonna break. It's gonna break. But Param, you eased me off the edge. I punched the holes, just used my Allen wrench to punch holes. It was fine.
You punch holes where the screws are supposed to go.
Yes, not in the FEP.
What I have often done, and this happened to me 3 times now, so I just count on it happening every time I get the FEP together, is I'm putting the FEP together and I'm screwing everything in, or I'm cutting the edge off, or something involved where I've already done a ton of the work. Like just that initial getting it between the sandwich layers is the 24 screws, which are these very tiny screws that use Allen heads on them. And you have to use that tiny little Allen wrench to get all these screws on. It is one of the more monotonous, annoying parts of this hobby. It's the part I enjoy the least. And I dread it when I have to change FEPs. It's not as bad as I'm making it sound. I just hate tedious things. This is a tedious thing. And then like almost done, and I'm ready to put it on, and then my Allen wrench will slip, and I'll put a big old dent right in the middle of my FEP that I just changed. Or I'm cutting away the excess after putting it in the first frame, and my hobby knife will slice a hole right in the center of my FEP. And like anymore, I don't consider that I have spare FEPs unless I have like 3 in the chamber ready to go, because I know I'm going to screw up at least once putting it on there. Thankfully, FEPs are cheap.
Yeah. And you can get them, like if you don't do the branded ones, you get them super cheap. Yeah.
So I just usually get the 5-pack for $15 or $20 from Elegoo. That's what I just grab.
Yep. So you mentioned something about winter and coldness. I think you were going to talk about that.
Yes, it is the winter season, and as I've learned my first winter season with the printer, it is the it is the season of mysterious printer failures. It doesn't matter if your settings are dialed in, if your FEP is super crisp, if your resin has been shaken and stirred correctly. When the temperature drops in your printer room, you will have failures, and it will be mysterious and frustrating. And the answer is that you have to have your resin printer at around 68 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 20 degrees Celsius or more, to use the recommended print settings to successfully print. And if you do not have it, you need to find some way to get that resin warmed up to that temperature and printed at that temperature if you want to have successes. Now, yes, if it's slightly colder, you can have some more success by just increasing the exposure time. This has worked half and half for me when I've tried it that way. But in the end, you really do just need to warm it up, get that printer nice and toasty if you want to have successful prints. And there are a few ways to get about it. So have you thought about how you're going to warm your printers up in this chilly season?
So we were talking about space heaters, but quite frankly, the idea of doing that in the garage, building a hood to get like a temperature hood and everything, it just got so daunting and so fire hazardy that I just took it back inside. Like, I gave up. My garage at 50 something degrees started getting warps in some of my prints, and I was like, nope, it's done. We're done. So I just took it inside after that. I honestly would have to build probably like an enclosure to get what I want.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the obvious first solution is, hey, do I have a space that is already climate controlled that I can make sure, like, do I have a spare office that nobody is using right now? Do I have room in the craft area? Like, does the utility closet have room for a printer? Like, getting it into an already heated space is like the easiest option. You do not want your printers in spaces that you spend all your day in or all your night, because resins are getting safer, filtration systems are getting better, but let's not push our luck past what we want. We still do not know the long-term effects of all this resin. Let's do not expose ourselves to it unduly. So yeah, do not put your printer in your bedroom. I will go ahead and say printer in the bedroom, bad idea. In the spare guest bedroom, probably okay. You know,
that is actually where mine is right now.
Yeah, that's probably a fine place to go. You just don't want to run it when you have people sleeping in there. That'd be a bad thing.
Right.
But if you're running the printer in the spare bedroom, sure. You want to have a place that you can ventilate, so have a window that you can open to get that stuff out of there after you're done with it. But if you have that option, that's the best option. I am lucky enough that my area in the utility room is semi temperature controlled. Like, it's not temperature controlled directly, but the room is left open enough that the adjacent room usually keeps it nice and warm, except for in the worst of the winter nights.
Right.
And for those periods, I use a space heater next to the printer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any sort of like enclosure around it, or it just heats up?
I do not, and that's and that is option number 2. But I guess I'm going to use option number 1 first because we mentioned it. But here is my space that I'm using right now. It ain't much, but it's mine. This is just the utility room. I have my printer set up. I have it on a little metal cake tray, cookie dish actually, so that if there's any spills that goes into the cookie dish, I keep all my tools right there next to the printer. I have my little silicone mat in front of the printer that I do all my work on. I have a little shelf where I keep all my cleaning supplies and stuff. My little wash and cure station sitting over there in the corner. I've got me my little space heater in the far corner over there. Yep. And I turn that on when I'm doing a print, and I know that it's going to be extra cold.
I actually didn't ever see this, and I also am using a cookie pan. Maybe the grok is in effect. Cool. Well, yeah. So any other tips you'd recommend for people if they're having temperature issues?
All right, so this is actually pretty inefficient. Like, if trying to use a space heater to heat up your garage, probably not the smartest move. Like, right next to the printer, if you can get away with it, just so that that little corner is warm, and only run it while you're doing the prints, and
Right.
like you've previously warmed things up in advance. That's good. But other solutions, there are little bitty portable printers that, like, tiny little printers, not printers, tiny little heaters that you can slip inside of the printer, inside the little housing that the printer has, the little hood. And there's, like, I know Uncle Jesse did a video where he printed one out and modded it, and that was really nice. Or it might have been Maker's Muse. I'm not sure which of the two channels that was. But you can buy just tiny little plug up heaters that would easily fit inside that enclosure, and just keep that little tiny space heated up. It doesn't take much heat to heat less than 2 cubic feet.
Right.
Yeah, and that's an option. And then the other option that's real popular is enclosures.
Yep.
And they come in 2 varieties. You can buy an enclosure, which is that one that's really popular is like just like an insulated hood that you can just drop over the printer and slide this tiny heater in there. And they come in like non-ventilated and ventilated varieties. They have some that have like little ventilation hoses that you can use to hook into a ventilation system if you want to. Like, if you are having a printer in the house, having a ventilated area that it can be in, so that you never need to worry about the fumes, is a great way to do it.
Right.
And you can buy little pop-up hoods that you can then fold up and just stash away when you don't need them anymore.
Yeah, I saw somebody cobbled together out of like a metal frame and some plastic from just like Harbor Freight. That was pretty cool looking.
Yeah, and then you can DIY one with like doors and like hooks into the same filter system that you use for your airbrush in your hobby room. That's a popular option that people have gone with.
Yeah.
Or if you get your inner carpenter out and start building a cabinet for it, repurpose an old armoire. And they do sell some nice bigger ones, and that's the ultimate solution. It's like, I have my little closet and my little printy armoire enclosure that has 5 Saturns in it, and it's all filtrated out into the outside, and it's all warm and toasty and kept at a perfect 70 degrees Fahrenheit for optimal printing quality. And I would love to do that one day. I ain't got time for that right now.
Right now, yeah, for sure. Jeez.
So for me, space heater next to the printer is my solution. But yeah, that's the most thing. If it's too cold, you're going to start getting fails. You can try to compensate at first by just increasing your exposure times, but that's not going to work always. And as it gets colder, it's definitely not going to work.
I'm even just going to point out your build plate. Like, oftentimes I'll take my stuff out to clean it, and like if I'm in a hurry and I leave my build plate out in the garage or something, it can get cold enough to cause an indoor print to fail too. So like, you have to make sure it comes back up to temp once you bring it in. Like, I wasn't thinking, and just was like, threw it back in, and it was ice cold and bad stuff. And it was bases, so that bases are bad for me already.
You have no luck with bases.
I don't. Yeah. It's one of the few things now that I lean pre-support unless I really have to jigger it around to fit more stuff on my plate or something. So, but sometimes not. I don't know.
Yeah,
we are running long. I have so much more to talk about. Yikes.
Indeed, but we should probably wrap this up before this becomes an episode of No Direction.
Right?
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in for another episode of Print Your Games, where we
wait a second. I have one shout out I definitely want to do. Is that okay? Put on the brakes. Yeah. No, this is because it is useful information, and it is time sensitive because it's a tribe thing. Just wanted to point out that Edge Miniatures, which usually does like kind of like dark Eldar stuff, did a pack with 16 different sets of modular wings in it. And so if you're kit bashing flight stuff, need wings for projects, it is gold. There's so many different styles of wings, like mechanical wings, bug wings, demon wings, angel wings, so many. that I just wanted to point it out. It's the sort of thing that like it'd be an easy skip, and just even signing up for the tribe and dropping it is worth it, in my opinion, to just get all the wings for kit bashing. Look at that. That's crazy.
That is a lot of wings.
That's a lot of wings. So
I was going to shout out some wings today too.
Oh, who?
Yeah, but not nearly as awesome as these wings. These are a lot of different, very awesome wings that Edge Miniatures has. I mean, that wing looks like it's sewn together from human skin.
Well, you know me.
But North Star Miniatures did a set of like demonic / bat wings. Now, North Star Miniatures is a traditional miniature company. They do the Frostgrave minis, the Stargrave minis, the Oathmark minis, as well as a bunch of historicals. Well, they did a Frostgrave set of demon miniatures, but there's no wings on the sprues. So they made some wings that you could buy super cheap from them. It's like $5 for $5 or something, like super cheap to buy from them direct. But they made the STL file for those wings completely free, so that anybody can just print their own little. So if you just Google up North Star Miniature Demon Wings, it's a really nice little set of bat-like demon wings that are perfectly scaled for a medium-sized creature. But of course, 3D printing, make it any size you want. It's completely free. They're not as awesome as these wings, though.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me throw that in the last second.
No problem. If you do want to join, if you want more Print Your Games, you can find more at printyourgames.com. And you can find us also on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all the places, as well as our new Discord server, which is discord.printyourgames.com. We very much appreciate it. If you want to email us and ask us some questions, you can do so over at podcast@printyourgames.com. And we will see you all next week. Thank you.
Thanks for watching and listening.
Remember, keep printing those minis.
All the minis.